By his 30th year of clinical out-of-body research, Robert Monroe had reached a quiet, settled completion. He sat with his life's work, feeling a composed satisfaction. Monroe's research was built on a physical, academic baseline established in the laboratory. He built a verifiable dataset using rigorous audio monitoring. He tracked and isolated his exact physiological states during every experiment. He documented these isolated states in meticulous, handwritten logs, creating a reliable analog record of his physical condition over time. This strict physical baseline served a distinct purpose. When he finally stepped off the mapped edge of reality, he could prove his expedition was a documented event rather than a physiological hallucination. With his physical baseline secure, Monroe set a new objective. He decided to unlatch his security belief belt and map the absolute edge of existence for himself alone. He immediately encountered a geographic obstacle resting just outside physical reality. He identified it as an impenetrable atmospheric layer, naming it the H-band noise. He experienced this barrier as a screaming, chaotic field. It consisted entirely of uncontrolled thoughts radiating outward from every living human mind. The static was stacked historically, containing present thoughts layered simultaneously over the continuous anxieties of every previous human era. To map the unknown space beyond, an explorer has to survive this blinding static of collective human anxiety without losing their individual identity. Once a traveler breaches the H-band noise, the screaming static cuts out instantly. Monroe described stepping abruptly into a space of profound, open silence. In this quiet space, he encountered a luminous, featureless column of shifting light. He clinically labeled the entity INSPEC, short for Intelligent Species. Their communication lacked any human fear. It operated entirely on a clinical, two-way telepathic exchange. The mechanics of this telepathy relied on what Monroe called a rote, related, organized thought energy. It manifested as a dense physical sphere of highly complex information. The sheer volume of data compressed inside this single sphere physically staggered his consciousness upon impact. This exchange demonstrated that human language is a primitive bottleneck. Pure conceptual data transfers instantaneously, carrying a staggering amount of context all at once. Unpacking the rote revealed a stark timeline for human endeavor. Monroe saw that within 2 generations, any service he provided to humanity would be forgotten. Footprints in the sand washed away by the tide. This made his lifelong goal of service feel suddenly, devastatingly small. The data identified a drive that preceded human culture, an animal instinct for nostalgia, the primal yearning to return home. Monroe saw this homing instinct as the true engine behind our global efforts in astronomy and space exploration. He suggested our billions spent on space probes are the external expression of a deeper, internal pull to find our source. Monroe returned to the entity beyond the H-band noise. He formally requested clearance to visit the exact coordinates of his spiritual origin. Reaching the absolute edge of the map required abandoning his noble human ambitions and surrendering entirely to this irrational instinct to return to origin. He focused on the coordinates by stretching his mind toward the concept of home. He was immediately caught and carried away on a rushing current. The destination materialized as towering columns of luminous, shifting color, displaying hues he had never previously imagined. A woven, continuous music filled the space. Thousands of distinct, overlapping melodies played simultaneously in perfect counterpoint. Within this utterly relaxing and familiar space, 1,000 years of time could pass in a single instant, appearing to fulfill every human spiritual yearning. Then, his clinical observer instinct, an analytical worm, as he called it, woke up. He noticed a specific blue cloud, followed by 2 yellow ones that felt oddly repetitive. He applied a rigorous geographic test to the environment. He moved to a completely different vantage point in the realm to verify its spatial structure. He found the exact same configuration waiting for him. The realm was a fixed, repeating loop. The inhabitants were tiny curls of energy playing an endless, mindless game, going round in the exact same pattern. Monroe suddenly recognized that he was once one of these curls himself. This perfect, inescapable stagnation was exactly why he had originally fled into physical existence. The ultimate spiritual destination humanity blindly seeks is a beautiful, sterile prison of infinite repetition. He executed an immediate, panicked emergency return. He forced a sensation of violent reverse movement to pull himself out of the loop. He arrived abruptly back in a grounded, mundane reality. His return was signaled not by a high-tech lab monitor, but by the physical weight of his cat resting on his pillow. He lay in the specific, quiet, ticking reality of his waking environment. The stark display of the digital clock stood in sharp contrast to the cosmic, timeless scale of his journey. Monroe had achieved his goal of mapping the absolute edge, but he was left in permanent isolation. He now carried the heavy burden of knowing that humanity's ultimate yearning is a trap he must never fall into again.